So Better Call Saul is done. The final episode has premiered. Saul gone, which has so many different meanings, of course, besides the obvious. But here we are in the final episode of Better Call Saul, which I think is an episode of atonement, at least as much as you can atone for the amount of things that Jimmy McGill has done over the course of his life. Now, one thing that I said when I was talking about the series as a whole is that Jimmy has always been a scammer. You know, he's always been Slippin' Jimmy. He's always been a scam artist. This is just how he does things. And he gets this level of confidence and this feeling of superiority for pulling it off and always believing that he's going to come out on the other end. And I think that's part of what leads into his confidence and leads into his just determination to get away with things, is because it's not like he's wondering if he's going to get away with something. He truly believes down to his hardest heart of souls that he can find a way to get out of almost every single situation, because he essentially has his entire life. This episode, I like that it focused on the idea of time travel, which is kind of funny because Better Call Saul as a show is kind of like a time travel show in a way, because in one way it's a prequel to Breaking Bad, so we're going into the past and we're seeing what characters did before we knew them in Breaking Bad. And also with a show like Better Call Saul, you have moments that kind of jump all over the timeline, because we jump into the post-Breaking Bad world, we jump into things that happened during Breaking Bad, we're in the prequel era, so all of Better Call Saul is kind of like time travel in a way. And one of the main themes that this episode was showing is, what would you change if you could go back in time? Is there a moment that you would go back to change something? And for a lot of Saul's life that we've seen throughout this show is that he has this absolute refusal to admit anything real in life when it comes to his regrets or things that he did wrong or horrible things that his involvement have led to over the years, is that he just kind of double downs into this Saul persona to just believe that he can get out of virtually anything. In the opening scene of this episode, it shows the time where him and Mike were lost in the desert together, which I really enjoyed bringing Mike back for an episode, because I was really wondering if they would do that, because Mike essentially is the second main character of the show. You could say Kim is as well, but a lot of Better Call Saul, it was the Saul storyline and the Mike storyline. So to have the finale without Mike at least involved a little bit, I would have been a little bit heartbroken. So I'm glad that they incorporated a scene with him. But him and Saul are having this conversation when they're stuck in the desert together, and Saul talks about, you know, we're sitting on $7 million. Like, what if we went and invested this or something like this? And he's like, what if we took, you know, $6 million and we made a time machine? What would you do if you had that, just as a thought experiment? And, you know, he gets Mike to play along, and Mike thinks of a couple of things. He thinks of, I believe the first one was probably the date of his son's death. And then the second one, he thinks of a time where he took his first bribe as a police officer. So that would have eventually led him down the road, the butterfly effect that led him to where he is now, where he is just so locked in and comfortable with his position of doing all of these, you know, horrible things and helping out Gus Fring and just like accepting this lifestyle, that this is just who he is as a person. You know, maybe there was a time where there was a different path that was available to him. And when he reflects the question back on Jimmy or Saul, he just says, oh yeah, I would have invested in this company and became a billionaire. You know, kind of just focusing on money, nothing about his actual life other than just his financial standpoint, right? And then there's another scene where him and Walter White were waiting to get their new identities and kind of be transported to their new lives or where it would be. Love to see Walter White back into this series, and also Bryan Cranston can just like snap into that character so perfectly. Like I felt like I was watching a scene just taken from the Breaking Bad finale when I was watching that scene. It was incredible. But again, he's laying there and they're trying to come up with conversation, BSing back and forth, and you know, he comes up with the time machine question again, and he asks Walter what would he do. And Walter, besides like berating him about how time travel would never work, you know, just doing the classic Walter White thing, he eventually gets around to answering the question, and he's talking about the company of gray matter, which essentially is sort of like the beginning cursor point of what would lead Walter White to have his regret, to feel inferior, to want to display that ego and want that power to rise. You know, the jealousy that he had, the insecurity that he had about it, everything that happened with gray matter, that, you know, he gave up his portion of the company that went on to be super successful. And it's sort of this, it is that thorn in his side that allowed him to, you know, branch out and become Heisenberg over time. And then again, when he reflects the question back on Jimmy, Jimmy just says, oh yeah, there's one time I was pulling a scam and, I meant to fall on the ground, but I actually like really hurt my knee. And it's just like, it still hurts to this day. And it's just, and then Walter has this great line where he just says, oh, so you've always been like this, which is true. It's true. He like, this is who he has always been. And this is one of like the main differences between him and Walter White. If we look at the differences between Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, is that, I mean, yes, Walter always had that within him deep down, but like Jimmy always was Saul to some degree. He was slipping Jimmy. He always was maneuvering himself out of these tricky situations and scamming and getting one over on people and lying with the truth and lying through his teeth. And this is just how he lived his life. It's how he survived. It's how he was able to move up in the world. It's just what he's always done. It's always been a part of him. And anything real, he just suppresses down and just refuses to ignore it. And every time that he can face it, he just becomes Saul a little bit more. And that's why this finale was so important, and this is why it was very important to be different than Walter's finale, is that, Saul gets caught by the cops right in the beginning of this episode. Like, right as soon as the call is made, he's, like, trying to escape, runs into the dumpster, cops find him right away, which I really like that idea. I like that the whole episode wasn't him on the run, though I'm sure there's a way that you could do that I would have really enjoyed. I really like that they went with the direction of him getting caught right away. And what's the first thing that he does? Is try to talk his way out of it. What can I do to sort of manipulate the situation for my benefit to come out on top? Because that's just like the way that his brain is wired. So I love that he grabs that one lawyer. I can't remember his name, but like the other like rival lawyer that they've had throughout the entire series to basically be his lawyer, but he's really just a body to sit there while Saul represents himself. And I also really like the cameo from Betsy Brandt as Marie Schrader kind of coming in, because, if he was helping Walter White out that entire time, he is in part responsible, an accessory, they would call it, to those murders. So it was really cool to see her again. Always cool when you get to see more like little Breaking Bad characters make a cameo. Also, Betsy Brandt is like super attractive. I don't know why. Like, am I weird for thinking that? I don't know. I've always like thought Marie was like super attractive. Is that weird? I don't know. Anyways, I love the beginning here and then the switch that happens, like the bait and switch that happens, because first he's just within the Saul persona and he's basically lying with the truth, arguing the fact that he was forced to do these things by Walter White, that he was a victim along the way. As time went on, he saw that opportunity and he's the one that actively got Walt involved with the Gus Fring business and everything. So it was him that was able to do it. And actually, that's true. Like, without Saul Goodman's help, Walter probably never would have made it to the level that he did. So he was a huge contributor within that. And basically, by doing that, he gets like a life sentence down to 7 years, which is just like unfoundable to think about. Like, I don't think that would ever happen in real life, but he is Saul Goodman after all. So he, and it's just sort of like the confidence and ego to do that. But then when it comes to the actual court hearing, he has this moment and Kim is there, and I think that's kind of what the final trigger was for him, because he saw what she did and he saw that she owned up. She brought the confession to the DA, or at least the explanation of what happened to Howard, and he was aware of this, and she didn't just run. She was basically trying her best to own up to the things that she had done, atonement, right? Whereas Jimmy had just ran, and he had been running his entire life. Like, that's all the Saul Goodman persona is just him running from Jimmy McGill. And so there's this moment where I think that he reflects on that, and he sees what Kim did, and he thinks about it, and he's in this moment where he's already won, essentially. He could just take that and run with it. But then this moment happens where he comes up to represent himself, and he finally just bears down on everything, and he admits it all, like, with the truth, with that confidence that Saul would have, but it's all Jimmy coming out, where he admits it through that confidence and just saying that I am the one. I am responsible for getting Walter to where he was, and I am responsible for my brother killing himself, which he basically admits right there on the stand. And that in itself, I think, is the correct direction for this show to end on, not to end on this big explosive event, but to end on Jimmy doing something in order to gain atonement for his sins. You know, instead of just constantly running away from things, instead of just constantly putting on a persona, instead of just constantly just trying to make things go as large as they possibly can, instead he comes back to center and just admits it all. And it's sort of, you know, it goes into the final flashback, the callback about the time machine, and it goes to when he was with Chuck, and he was like talking about getting clients and how his clients aren't nothing compared to like what Chuck's are, and Chuck is like, you know, they need to be represented equally, like this is the law. Like Chuck was all about the law, like everything that is the law, you know, is sacred. So that's what it doesn't matter who your client is, you represent them to the best of your ability. It was about the job. And you know, there's this moment where you could tell that like Jimmy has this insecurity with Chuck and, you know, how successful he was, and Chuck doesn't maybe necessarily think Jimmy should be doing what he's doing, but there's also this like mutual like respect moment where they are taking care of each other. And, you know, Chuck says something along the lines of like, you know, if you don't like where you're at, there's no shame in just backtracking a little and then finding a new path. But that's never what Jimmy did. And then it flashes down to the time machine novel, and like that's the whole point, right? That was the whole point of like, if you could go back in time and change something, what point in time would you go back to? And I think that that's what it was for Jimmy, is that moment. Like maybe I would course correct, you know. It wasn't too late at that point. At that point, yeah, you'd pulled scams when you were younger, and you know, you got a little bit in trouble here and there, but you're on a decent path. Like you're going in a good direction. And then, you know, everything that happened in Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad happened. So that's where he wound up. So I think Jimmy choosing to go to prison is multiple things. One, I do think it is atonement for everything that he has done, believing it's the right thing to do at this point. Also, still one, because it was on his terms. He is going to atone for it on his terms, right? No one is making him do it. He is choosing to do it because he could have had that 7-year sentence. So because he knew that he could get that, he just was more willing to do this, because it's like, here's the option. I'm choosing not to take that option. Instead, I'm going to go and do this full atonement here. And then there's this moment where him and Kim get to see each other in prison. You know, she comes to visit, and, you know, they have this reminiscent moment of where they always used to smoke their cigarettes together. And, you know, it's hard to say like what is really happening between these two at this moment. At least I feel like it is, because it's like she understands what he did, and I think there's like a huge level of respect there. But at the same time, you know, they've gone through so much that there is no turning back. So just like the time machine, you know, we're not able to redo this. So the only thing to do is move forward, and she has to move forward without him, because he's going to be there, you know, for 80 some years, essentially, unless he, you know, he could get out a little bit earlier. But the point is like, it's going to be an obnoxious amount of time where, you know, Kim has to go and live her life. She has to do the next thing for her. And so like the last shot, you know, is her like walking away, and the camera goes and like pans until Jimmy is covered by the wall, and then it's just the end credits. So I think that signifies Kim going on, moving forward, being able to get past this, while at the same time Jimmy is atoning for the things that they have done. So all things considered, I thought it was a great final episode. I think the final season, 6th season, is my favorite by far of Better Call Saul. Thinking about the series as a whole, you know, at this point it's kind of hard to contextualize because literally just watched the last episode. I still prefer Breaking Bad as the overall series, but I will definitely say that Better Call Saul gets progressively better every single season, and season 6 is far and away the best in my opinion. And I thought it was a fun ride going through it, so I really, really appreciated watching it. And sorry it took me so long to get to it, but yeah, this episode was pretty damn fantastic, I would say. So let me know what you guys think about it down below. What are your thoughts and feelings about the final episode of Better Call Saul? Put all your thoughts down in the comments below. Other than that, guys, thank you a lot for watching this video. Truly do appreciate it. Give it a like and a comment if you'd like to help it in the algorithm. Other than that, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.